Our journey begins at the east entrance of Yellowstone National Park, exploring Yellowstone Lake. We continue tracking the Yellowstone River and catch our first glimpse of the park's geothermal features in the Mud Volcano area. As we look north, we discover why the views of the upper and lower falls had such a dramatic impact on the park's creation. Following the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone, we head to the open plains of Lamar Valley. At the northwest corner of Wyoming, we understand why the park is a national treasure, starting with the Mammoth Hot Springs. Venturing southward, exploring the geothermal basins of the Yellowstone crater, we arrive at its most famous feature, Old Faithful, in time for a spectacular finale to our journey. With 5 entrances to Yellowstone National Park, we approach from the east, following along the Shoshone River in the Wapiti Valley, about 80 kilometers from Cody, Wyoming. Because of the weather restrictions, the east entrance to the Yellowstone Park remains open only from May to November. On entering the park, there's a glimpse of the towering peaks of the Absaroka Range of the Rocky Mountains. Yellowstone, which became the world's first national park in 1872, hosts over 3 million visitors a year. Access to the park from the east is made possible by the Sylvan Pass, maintained to allow winter travel by snowmobile or snow coach. It was named after Sylvan Lake, which rests along the route. As we continue along the pass, we come to Yellowstone Lake, the largest body of water in the park. Its basin is part of the massive Yellowstone crater carved from the volcanic eruptions over 600,000 years ago. Yellowstone offers a splendid habitat for over 60 species of large mammals. Here we spot a small herd of elk. The park hosts an estimated 30,000 in total. The lake's northern tip is where it's fed and drained by Yellowstone River. A fishing bridge crosses at this meeting point, a spawning area for the native cutthroat trout. And nearby is a popular recreational vehicle park. Visitors wanting less rustic accommodation stay at the historic Lake Hotel. Originally built in the late 19th century, the hotel was restored to its 1920s grandeur in 1990. The Yellowstone River is a main tributary of the Missouri River and drains nearly an 1,100-kilometer stretch of the Rockies. Within the park, the river is used recreationally for flatboat fishing. The words Yellowstone were recorded by Lewis and Clark during their famous expedition after meeting with the Minotari Indians near the river in 1805. North along the river, we enter the Mud Volcano area. These formations are created from a geo-excretion of iron and hydrogen sulfide, which results in a dark grey colour and rotten egg smell. Flowing north out of Hayden Valley, the first signs of rapids are present as the Yellowstone River begins its descent toward the park's Grand Canyon. The river first cascades at the upper falls, dropping about 33 meters. Spectacular viewing points along the trails on either side of the canyon make this one of the favorite places in the park among visitors. And it's yet another example of how Yellowstone's landscape was shaped from volcanic events 600,000 years ago. The upper falls marks a junction where a hard lava flow met with a softer, altered flow. In 1871, Dr. Ferdinand Hayden, whose name was given to the valley, led a US geological survey into the unexplored Yellowstone region. Joining the expedition were photographer William Henry Jackson and artist Thomas Moran. Their photographs and paintings of the falls captured the nation's attention and inspired Congress to establish the national park a year later. The Yellowstone River continues to flow another half-kilometre before taking a much bigger plunge that will take it to the mouth of the Grand Canyon. The lower falls drop 94 metres and is the tallest waterfall in the park, nearly twice the height of Niagara Falls. It's also the largest volume of falling water in the Rocky Mountains. And this is the famous vantage point along the canyon that was immortalised in the famous painting by Thomas Moran, which now hangs in the White House. It was these majestic falls that were the subject of the almost mythic accounts composed by prospectors venturing into the Montana Territory in the mid-19th century. Frontier newspapers printed claims that the falls were thousands of feet high and referred to it as the most sublime spot on Earth. Two scenic routes off Grand Loop Road offer breathtaking views of the canyon, such as Point Sublime on the south rim. The other viewpoints take visitors to the absolute brink of the upper and lower falls, offering them a riveting encounter with the powerful Cascades. Some 10,000 years after the volcanic eruptions in Yellowstone, lava flows filled the region. One of these was a canyon lava flow, leaving a thermal basin shaped from the hot steam and gases that altered and weakened the lava. Other flows blocked lakes and created overflowing lakes that further moulded the Yellowstone Canyon. The park contains several broad, open valleys, such as the Lamar Valley in the park's northeast corner. Packhorse treks are very popular for guided camping tours. Organised trips can last as long as 10 days as visitors venture into the heart of Yellowstone's tranquil wilderness. Lamar Valley and the river stretches for almost 10 kilometres from its confluence with the Yellowstone River, just below the Grand Canyon, to its junction with the Soda Butte Creek tributary. A true treasure of Yellowstone, the valley is remarkable in its scenery. But it was also the stage for one of the most significant wildlife conservation projects, the recovery of the American bison. In 1903, there were less than 50 bison in the park. A century later, the population was nearly 5,000. The Yellowstone Park bison herd is one of 4 in North America that are free-roaming and genetically pure. 27 kilometers north of the canyon, a small creek shoots off the Yellowstone River and flows south to the park's third notable cascade, Tower Fall, which stands 40 meters tall. Named for the volcanic formations that surround it, the park offers a breathtaking view from an overlook that draws visitors in droves. Flying northwest, we pass over the Roosevelt Lodge Historic District. Originally built in 1919 as an education centre, the lodge offers guests rustic accommodation and horseback tours, exploring the area's wildlife. The area was named in honour of President Teddy Roosevelt, who camped near the site prior to its construction. Here we witness another popular tourist attraction, stagecoach rides. Once the primary mode of transportation for guests, who traverse the park for days along dusty roads, stagecoaches offer a nostalgic adventure through the sage-covered fields of Pleasant Valley. We are fortunate to capture a rarely seen resident of Yellowstone, the black bear. The park actually has a sizable population, as opposed to the estimated mere 300 grizzlies that take residence in the park. Although this bear is seen in the open meadow, black bears are usually found in timber areas. In our journey across the northern valleys of Yellowstone, we observe a playful bison. These animals are quite nomadic, migrating high to these grassy plateaus in the summer to mate. They are vegetarians, grazing on the grasslands and the meadows and foothills, as well as during the colder seasons. Bison are the biggest of the park's animals, and it is believed that the Yellowstone bison habitat is the only one in America to have existed since prehistoric times. Elk are high-elevation mammals and are more often seen in the early morning or late afternoon in the summers, grazing on the grasses of the meadows. In 1988, wildfires damaged 36% of the park. These areas eventually became a habitat for the elk as lush vegetation developed. For this reason, they also graze in areas recently logged. The elk bulls are symbolized by their beautiful antlers. The rack may have 6 to 8 branches on each side and weigh more than 13 kilos. By March or April of each year, the bull completely sheds its antlers, then begins to regrow them, starting in May until August. And nearby, the Gardner River cuts through the rugged Sheep-Eater Canyon, named after the Sheep-Eater Indians, who were believed to use these cliff edges to herd and trap game. Today, a spectacular trail along the canyon brings hikers to one of Yellowstone's best-kept secrets, the Osprey Falls. Nestled in the narrow gorge, the spray created by the waterfall provides a welcome cooling mist for visitors on a hot summer's day. The park sits on a plateau at an average height of 2,400 meters, bound by mountains that soar as high as 3,300 meters. Often the plateau fills with clouds, setting a very enchanting tone for the visitors. Nestled between Mount Everts and the Mammoth area, about 8 kilometers from the north entrance, is Yellowstone Park's headquarters. A series of red-roof buildings constructed in the late 1800s and early 1900s. For most of its early existence as a national park, Yellowstone was operated by the US Cavalry, with this area serving as an army post for 32 years. The stone buildings house 400 occupants. In 1918, the Army turned over control of the park to civilians, who have maintained Fort Yellowstone as the park's headquarters ever since. The historic Army buildings now serve as offices and resident housing. Additionally, there is a medical clinic and the Albrecht Museum, which chronicles a history of the park's residents. Adjacent to the Fort Yellowstone district lies a magical white hillside, blanketed in calcium carbonate. This geothermal wonder of nature, the Mammoth Hot Springs, is a large complex of limestone terraces appearing in white, tan and cream-coloured varieties. A circuit of boardwalks and stairs allow explorers to navigate through the impressive displays of step-like sedimentary rock. Each of these formations exhibits individual character, such as the now extinct Liberty Cap, a 14-metre cone formed from hot water emanating from a single source. As heated water from the Norris-Geyser Basin moves through a fault line and escapes the Earth's surface through cracks and fissures, dissolved limestone is deposited onto the terraces. Over 1,800 kilos of calcium carbonate flow into Mammoth each day. The yellow, orange and brown terraces get their colour from bacteria that are able to grow in the waters. We exit the northwest region of Yellowstone and continue our journey moving south, back towards the crater rim. It's here that we'll explore a basin that boasts the park's highest temperatures. The extreme thermal conditions of the Norris-Geyser Basin result from the junction of two major fault lines and the ring of the fracture zone of the Yellowstone crater. For this reason, the basin boasts the hottest, most acidic and most dynamic thermal features in the park. Clear pools become violently bubbly and muddy, even temporarily transforming into geysers. Within this basin, we see a hot spring with prismatic characteristics, developed from the pigmentation of the bacteria that grows in this mineral-rich water. Near the western entrance is the origin of the Madison River at the confluence of Gibbons and Firehole rivers, overlooked by National Park Mountain. This place is known as Madison Junction, and legend has it that this is the site where leaders of the 1870 Washburn expedition first conceived the idea of creating a national park while sat around a campfire. Continuing south, we examine the lower Geyser Basin, with thermal features that are scattered in small clusters, spread out mostly on open meadows along the Firehole River. We concentrate on the Fire Lake and the fountain groups, known for its multicoloured mud pots. The basin also delights spectators with its fumaroles and geysers, as well as bubbling pools and hot springs. The White Dome ejects water and steam through a 6-metre-high pinkish-white cone. The lower basin geyser has many areas of high activity, such as the Firehole and Hot Lakes, which drain from a tributary of the Firehole River. The aptly named Steady Geyser is the largest constantly erupting geyser in Yellowstone and the world. The Fountain Paint Pot group is the most diverse cluster of thermal features in the lower basin, with hot springs, mud pots, geysers and fumaroles. The Clepsydra geyser, a name derived from the Greek word for water clock, has 4 vents, spewing water in 2 different phases. Clepsydra's wild phase can last 3 to 6 hours. The other notable feature of this group is the fountain paint pots, which derive their name from their red, yellow and brown colours. In the spring, these mud pots are most active, when an abundant source of water from melted snow creates a dancing effect in the bubbles. During the warmer summer months, the mud gets drier and thicker. In between the upper and lower Giza basins is the appropriately named Midway Giza Basin, nicknamed Hell's Half Acre by the writer Rudyard Kipling. This is Excelsior Giza, once the largest in the world, which releases 22 million litres of water per day into Firehole River. Excelsior is flanked by the Grand Prismatic Spring, the largest hot spring in the park and third largest in the world. The spring discharges over 2,000 litres of water per minute. The colour varies at times, depending on the pigment ratio of the bacteria growing in the water, as well as the water temperature. The deep blue colour is so intense due to the high purity and depth of the water in the middle. The Grand Prismatic Spring is yet another famous Yellowstone subject of artist Thomas Moran. Moving along to the Upper Gizas, we focus on an isolated group called the Black Sand Basin, highlighted by its colourful hot springs such as emerald and rainbow pools. The basin got its name from the black volcanic glass that covers much of the area. Another famous feature of the Upper Gizas is the most unusually shaped Grotto Giza. The gusher formed around stumps of dead pine trees, destroyed by an earthquake thousands of years ago. With a clear view of the Old Faithful Giza, the inn of the same name has operated as a hotel in the park since 1904. Constructed of locally grown pine, it is the largest log hotel in the world. The foundation and the massive fireplace inside were made from the volcanic stone that is dominant in the park. A short walk from the historic inn is the Old Faithful Giza. Because of its predictability, it is quite possibly the most calculable geothermal feature on the planet. Thus, the cone-shaped Giza is also the most visited and anticipated attraction. Like most visitors to the park, the famous US Army expedition that named Yellowstone in 1870 count Old Faithful as the first Giza they set eyes on. Thus, she was also the first in the park to receive a name. The best indicator among locals of the next eruption is to watch for the benches around Old Faithful to fill and overflow. Old Faithful begins each performance with a prologue of splashing and small jetting for a period of up to 20 minutes. The jetting usually grows over 2 to 3 steps before reaching its maximum height. Ranging 32 to 56 meters in height, it shoots out between 14 and 32,000 liters of water. Predictions of Old Faithful's next eruption are based on the duration of its previous blast, which average 2 to 4 minutes. The intervals between eruptions average about 90 minutes, and times are estimated 1 eruption in advance. Old Faithful is indeed both a symbol of Yellowstone Park and an American icon. A perfect place to end this journey.